series called Focus on where are we going with our young adults ministry, what's God called us to do, what are we here doing. You have a lot of churches where it's like, well, give them the 20s, like let them just hang out with each other and, maybe they'll date and get married and so we can grow our children's ministry, that's what, and hey, I want y'all to all, like, hey, some of you looking for people, I'm all for that. People are like, oh, he just goes to church to meet people. Would you rather him go to a bar? No, this is a perfect place for that. That's totally fine. But anyway, all that to say, that's not the core reason why we're here. Why are we here? What are we doing? And we're on this series where we're going through the vision and the mission of Grace Community Church Young Adults to really see what's God called us to, what are we called to see, where are we going with this. And so vision, which we talked about our vision last night, and I said, or last night, 2 weeks ago, vision is what we desire to see. It's what we desire to see. It's a picture. It's something, if I describe it to you, I can paint a picture of what we want to see God do in this house, what we want to see God do in this city. And mission is what we do to make that vision a reality. If vision is nouns, mission is verbs. Think about it like that. Mission is what are we doing? What are the steps, the practical steps to get there? So let me just give a quick recap from last week. Our vision statement is to equip Grace Community Church's young adults, which I drove home. This is equipping. If you were here 2 weeks ago, you got some news, and that is that you got called into ministry, every single last one of you. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, he doesn't want you to just sit there and rot. He actually wants you to impact the world around you. Come on. So we want to equip you to reach the unchurched. We're not just navel-gazing Christians that just sit around with other Christians and gossip about other Christians and sit around and talk about the latest preacher that had an affair. We're actually people that go out into the community because we want to reach the people around us. So we want to reach the unchurched. So that, and this is the big, if you take one thing away from this, take this, so that Jesus' redemption can impact every area of our lives. If you want to sum up our vision statement in 2 words, redemption impact. Redemption impact. That this is all about seeing what Jesus has done impact every single area of our lives and then impact every single area of our community. We want to see what does it mean, like what did Jesus dying on the cross and raising from the dead, that's all well and dandy, but what does that mean for Tuesday when my boss is yelling at me? What does that mean when I'm trying to figure out who to marry? What does that mean when I'm trying to figure out how to use my finances? What does that mean when I'm trying to make life decisions? How does that impact the way I live on a day-to-day life? How does that heal me from my pain? What does that have to do with my life? Redemption impact. That's our message, because at the core, if you cut me, I'll bleed this. The gospel changes everything. What Jesus did has implications for every single aspect of your life. Anyway, that's a quick recap of our vision. Now, here is our mission statement. This is the 3 things that we do. This week is going to be going through these 3 things. You're going to see point for point what each of these means, how we do them. If you're new, this is not typical. I typically every week will take a passage of the Bible and just dive into it, and we'll see what God has in that specific Bible passage. But just for this series, what we're doing is it's a focus on mission and vision. And so our mission statement. How do we do this? How do we see redemption impact, reach into us, change our lives, and then in turn change and transform the community? 3 things. We do 3 things here at Grace Young Adults. We don't do other things. There's a million things that you can do, but these are the 3 things we do. Discover Jesus, spiritual formation, and make an impact. Discover Jesus, spiritual formation, make an impact. Those are the 3 things that this ministry does, all right? And so what does that mean? How do we do that? So let me dive in. Discover Jesus. Discover Jesus. What do I mean by that? So I want to take you to a passage that's just like rocked my world probably about 10, 15 years ago when I just dove into it. And It's Hebrews chapter, it's Hebrews chapter 1. But I want to, before I hit it, I want to frame it like this. I want to frame it with a little contrast. This guy, James Smith, he's an sociologist of religion, and he made this comment about church in America, religion in America, and he said, the expression of religion in America is the same whether I go to a Protestant church, a Catholic church, a Mormon temple, a New Age congregation, or even if I go to a mosque. I find that typically religion in America, in 90% of religious gatherings, is, he coined this term, it's all the same. He says it is moralistic, therapeutic deism. Moralistic, therapeutic deism. Now, Matt, what does moralistic, therapeutic deism mean? Thank you. We're going to dive into that. What does he mean by that? What does that mean about kind of his diagnosis in church in America? Because he's brilliant, and he's like, yes, this is very true of the sad state of religion in America. Let me break this down. Moralistic. This is the message wherever I go. Do the right thing, which we want you to do the right thing. Therapeutic. Do the right thing so that you can feel better about yourself. We want you to feel better about yourself. Deism. For a general God that is non-specific. This sort of non-specific general belief in God. What he's saying is that I could go into 90% of churches. I could take the message, if I pulled out the word Jesus and I went across the street to the Jewish synagogue and preached the exact same message, no one would really notice. And then I could probably go across the street to the mosque with the exact same message that says, do the right thing so that you'll feel better about yourself, and God's real and he's up there and he's happy about it. And I could take out the word, and I could just, and they'd say, yeah, we believe the same thing. And nobody would even notice the difference. Now, here's the problem with that. If that's all we have is I come to church so that I can get a Tony Robbins message and then sprinkle a "in the name of Jesus" in there, I don't have any interest in going to church. Screw it. I'll just go listen to Tony Robbins. All right? Like, what was the point? What was the point in just 3 steps to a better life? Because we actually have something so much better. And in Hebrews 1, the author of Hebrews dives right into it. He says, in the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the many prophets and at many times and in various ways. So the author of Hebrews, he's reflecting and he's saying, you know what? God has tried to come and to touch humanity, to touch this world, and he's spoken to us through these prophets. We've had Moses come up. We've had Elijah come up. We've had Jeremiah, and God communicated who he was through their word all throughout the Hebrew scriptures and communicated his heart all throughout this. God has spoken to us through the prophets through various times in various ways, but we all know how that turned out. It was really frustrating. They stoned the prophets. They killed the prophets. It didn't go well. But then he gives us a surprise and he says, but in these last days, meaning in this time, he has spoken to us by his Son. He has spoken to us by his Son. God decided to speak a louder word than any prophet who would stand on the street corner and yell. God decided to speak a louder word than any book that could be written. God decided to speak a louder word than anything that could be scribbled on a wall. God spoke a word, and he spoke to us through flesh and bone. God spoke to us through Jesus Christ's very existence. That the whole world had all these ideas about what God is, who he is, what does God mean. But now in this last day, God has spoken to us through flesh and bone. That the revelation of God, how do we discover God? I don't know if you're anything like me, but probably when I was about 18, something hit me where it was like, I've got to figure out these bigger questions of life and death and who God is. Like, I had this hunger in me to say, I want to experience God in his height. I want to feel him. I want to touch him. I want to feel his presence. The moments that are the most meaningful in my life are the moments when I have a taste of just being in awe of God. And in these last days, God has spoken to us and revealed himself. And it wasn't through a loud word, it wasn't through a book, but it was through an actual man who came and suffered. Because most religions will tell you the revelation of God is a sword. It's something terrifying. Most religions will tell you that the revelation of God is a list of laws. But God has spoken to us through the very existence of Jesus right before us. Like I hope this gets deep inside your bones. It's God expressing himself in the face of Jesus Christ. Spoken to us by his Son. He goes on, he says, the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being. He's the radiance of his glory. It's radiance. It's this imagery of radiation. You know, I had when I was in college, I had a buddy, and he was in school as a metallurgist. He was a metal engineer, and he would always talk about metal. And I'd say, "What are you up to?" He's like, "Oh, sorry, I got to pour." I'm like, "What is a pour?" And he was pouring metal, and he always talked about this happened in the lab, that happened in the lab. And I was like, "What's your lab? What do you even do?" It never made any sense to me. One day I went to his lab I was going to meet him for lunch. He said, "Just come by my lab." And I go into this room, and it's this like industrial warehouse looking thing. And he has these giant like cauldrons everywhere. And you on top of these cauldrons, there was like this heat-resistant fabric. And he goes, "Come here." And so I walk over to him, and he takes this cauldron-looking thing and lifts up the fabric. And I had never experienced anything like it. It was this bright orange glowing thing, and I felt it singe my face. It was so hot. He was like, "That's molten whatever metal it was." But what was really cool is I've never experienced anything like that. You could see it. You could see the molten metal, but you could feel the radiance. Every single inch of that entire warehouse, you felt the heat as soon as he lifted that thing up, because you could feel the radiance of it. You could feel it radiating throughout the room. And what God is calling Jesus Christ, his Son, is he says it's the radiance of the Father's glory. That we feel God's very glory in our experience of Jesus. And that is this incredible, incredible truth that's at the center of the Bible, that's at the center of what we believe in Grace Community Church Young Adults, and that is this, simply stated, God has revealed himself in Jesus. God has revealed himself in Jesus. I've worked for years running church internships. I love running church internships. Some of you have interned. I've got some of my favorite interns in here. Yeah, these two are awesome. Justine, she even started off as an intern. Yeah, we get some great interns. Anyway, I love running internships. But one of the things that's interesting that I've just noticed over the years is on the application, I'll say, I want you to write your testimony. And I don't remember what y'all wrote, so I'm not thinking about anything y'all wrote, so don't get worried about that. I'll say, I want you to write your testimony of how you became a Christian. What do you know, and when Christians say, if you've been around church, and if you haven't, that's totally cool, and this is new, but I'll just give you a little inside note on evangelical Christian church culture. When Christians say, write your testimony, here's what testimony means. It's a competition to see who did the most drugs and slept with the most people, right? And so when you say, share your testimony, be like, well, I used to snort a gallon of cocaine every day, And then the next person gives their testimony like, well, I snorted 2 gallons of cocaine every day. And it just gets this bigger and bigger and bigger thing and, whatever. And there's something beautiful about it. Like to see like what God has saved people from, it gets me so fired up. But what's really interesting is 95% of the written testimonies that I've gotten in over the years at various churches, in different denominations, different kind of church cultures, when you read their testimony of how they got saved, there's one thing that's missing. 95% of them do not include something incredibly important, and that's Jesus. That's Jesus. My testimony, my, sort of story of salvation it's how I got out of depression and how I got off drugs. And you know what? The gospel has power. It can get you out of your depression. It can get you out of your drugs. But it's not you that did it. It's not you that does it. And if you think it's about you pulling up your bootstraps and getting sober, you miss the whole point. You miss the whole point. Do you know what actually makes the church beautiful? Do you know what actually makes the church powerful? Is that Jesus is here. And people say, well, I got saved and, I got saved when I was 6, or I got saved when I was 14 and I walked the aisle at youth camp, or I got saved a year ago, coming to Yaz. I got news for you. You know when you got saved? If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you got saved in 33 AD. You got saved the moment that Jesus died on that cross and he bore the wrath of God the Father against your sin on your behalf, and he took it upon himself. That's when you got saved. It wasn't any moment in your doing. It was in something that he did. You don't get saved by you. That's the whole point, is you're hopeless. I'm hopeless. You're like, oh, you're so negative. Oh my gosh, have you lived any life? If you live any life, you'll find out you're hopeless. If you live for just live a few more years, if you haven't realized you're hopeless in your own, it's coming. And I think what we've lost vision of in the church is really, really preaching about who Christ is. And that's why every single one of these gathering ends, I will not have another gather in where I just give you 3 steps to a better life and a few Bible verses to back it up. I just don't. I don't have any purpose in it. I had one of my best professors in seminary. He was my preaching professor. And we would have to preach in class, and we'd get up there, and he would tell us this. He would say, I've got a test for your sermon. If you preach your sermon and you could preach it in a Jewish synagogue, I'm going to fail you. I'm going to fail you. You know why? Because we have this incredible hope. And that's who Jesus is and what he's done. At the core of our mission is discovering Jesus. And that is what we do That is the way we do the Discover Jesus thing, is every second and fourth Tuesday, show up here for a message, and show up for a worship. I promise you we will sing every single song to Jesus and about Jesus. And I promise you, when we have these messages, I don't have time to tell you about something that's not Jesus. I don't have time to play church. I don't have time to give you self-help. All of these messages are about who Jesus is, what he did, and how that applies to your life. All right? We don't do anything. We don't try to just, life principles. Principles ain't going to help you if you don't have power. And the power comes in discovering who Jesus is. That's what these messages are all about, all right? And that is what we do at the Gathering In. I'll say it like this. If we have a really good gathering in, if we have a really good Tuesday night meeting, after the perfect gathering in, nobody is going to walk out and say worship was great. Nobody is going to walk out and say, well, the sermon was really good. If we have the perfect gathering in, nobody is going to walk out of here and say, well, didn't the lights look nice? Nobody is going to walk out of here after the perfect gathering in and say, wow, Makar, his story was hilarious. I could hear him telling stories about his dad all day. Like that, if that is what happens, we've missed it, all right? After the perfect gathering in, people are going to be in awe of God. After the perfect gathering in, people are going to walk out of this and say, oh my gosh, I've never seen Jesus in that light before. I've never understood the gospel like I did tonight. I've never seen how the gospel impacts my life like I did tonight. Oh my gosh, isn't he beautiful? Isn't he magnificent? I want to go pray and worship and read my Bible until I can discover him more. That's what's going to happen after the perfect gathering in. That's the purpose of these things. These nights are here for you to discover Jesus in a powerful way. Second component of our mission, spiritual formation. Spiritual formation. Now, what do I mean by spiritual formation? What is this? I want to tell you a story about a really impactful moment in my life. When I had a roommate in college, and he had this mentor of his, and he was this ancient pastor. He was this old man. He was this old pastor. He was kind of old school. He was kind of weird, but he would take us out to go stay with Bishop Chuck on the weekends. And one weekend we went down to Selma, Alabama, and we stayed with Bishop Chuck. And he came out, and the man would spend hours and hours a day with God. I mean, it's just one of the most incredible things. And I remember my roommate, Tommy, he looked at me after we'd hung out with Bishop Chuck, and he said, that man's been with God. And we all knew exactly what he meant. You could just tell. You ever been around somebody like that? Where you just look at him and you're like, I don't know everything about him. I can't tell you. I can just tell you, she's been with God. He's been with God. There's something inside of them, like they know God in a powerful way. Like they spend time with God. I can tell. There's no question about that. And when we talk about spiritual formation, we want to build a people that are like that. We want to build a people that are like that. One of my favorite worship leaders has a song, and she sings, I don't want to talk about you like you're not in the room. It's rich. Spiritual formation is where God becomes real. Prayer is like the weight room. I'm looking around, nobody looks like a good example, but when somebody spends a lot of time in the weight room, it's a totally insulting thing. It's bad to insult the audience. There's usually like just one of these guys that's just like, and you're like, hey, come on, stand up. Connor, did Connor run out? Darn. Adam, yeah, okay, you work. Yeah, Adam Dahlberg works. Does anyone wonder if Adam goes to the weight room? No. You look at him. He loves to be the center of attention too. You know, that you can tell if somebody's spent time in the weight room, right? And prayer's the same way. If somebody has a life where they spend time with God, where they encounter God, it really shapes who they are. You don't have to ask. One of my pet peeves is when people tell me how much time they spend a day praying. I don't care. Don't tell me that. If you've really prayed, I'll be able to tell. Don't worry. But something happens. Let me just talk for a second. Spiritual formation. What do I mean, spiritual formation? What does it look like to see somebody that's experienced spiritual formation? What's the difference? I want to just contrast here. Immature spiritual formation versus mature spiritual formation. This is one of our goals with Yaz. This is our mission. This is what we do, is spiritual formation. When it's immature, God feels distant. But when you have mature spiritual formation, God feels near. Immature spiritual formation, the spiritual life is an obligation. I've got to read my Bible. I've got to pray. I've got to go to church. Ugh, it's miserable. Mature spiritual formation, that's when the spiritual life is a joy. That's when the spiritual life is something you enjoy. It's when my favorite time in my day is when I get to look at Jesus and experience him. Immature spiritual formation, God is useful. Yeah, I have a relationship with God. I pray every time I'm in a bind. I don't really have a desire to pray outside of the times that my life is falling apart, but when it does, I know how to pray. You know, God is useful. Mature spiritual formation, God isn't just useful, he's beautiful. He's beautiful. You enjoy him. You like him. You love to spend time with him. It becomes your joy. It becomes something you can grow in. It becomes something you're addicted to. Reading the Bible is not just a discipline, it's a hobby. Prayer, contemplation, it's not just something that's a discipline. It becomes your joy. You get exhausted. You think, gosh, I just want to have some time with the Lord. That's what I'm craving. A lot of you have been stuck in bemoaning it, in the discipline of it, so long you don't even think this is possible. Come here, hang out. We're going to go deep in spiritual formation. Because if you're immature in spiritual formation, you look like everybody else. But real spiritual maturity, when you've been through real spiritual formation, you start to look like Jesus. You start to look like him. You start to live like him. You start to reflect him. Spiritual formation is at the core of what we do with Grace Young Adults. What do I mean by spiritual formation? Just I'm talking about the effects of it. Like, what is it when I say we do spiritual formation? What do I mean that we do? What do I mean that we emphasize? It's the activities that the Holy Spirit uses to form us. Prayer, worship, Bible study, fasting, so on and so on. We're in January, we're going to go through a whole series on how do I do spiritual disciplines that make me grow. I'm going to teach you how to pray. I'm going to teach you how to worship. I'm going to teach you how to study the Bible. I'm going to teach you how to dive deep into God, all right? That's the whole goal starting in January for a few months. That's going to be our series, and I'm super stoked about it. But it's all spiritual formation. How do I grow? What do I do to grow? What do I do to enjoy this and to get something out of it? On a practical level, when we say our mission is spiritual formation, how do we do that practically? 3 ways. 3 kind of programmatic things we do, Grace Community Church Young Adults, for spiritual formation. We have spiritual formation groups. I'm going to start, it's probably going to be like a 6:30 in the morning thing, to pray, just dudes. God bless you, girls. But just dudes, prayer, 6:30 in the morning. I'm going to start that in the new year. Brent, Angelica, y'all stand up. The Yoders, he leads our guys group. They're going through 1 Timothy. It's awesome. I mean, this guy's a stud. How many of you have gotten to know Brent? He's my favorite, all right? Angelica, and I've actually known Angelica's family longer than I've known about Grace. Solid girls group. Awesome opportunity where they're just going into the Bible, and you're like, I want to learn how to study the Bible, dive into the Bible. Hop in with one of these two. Y'all can sit. Thank you so much. Hop into the prayer meeting we're going to start for guys, like spiritual formation group. Second thing we do for spiritual formation is our worship nights. We had one a few months ago, and Justine Huffer is going to lead a Christmas worship night coming up here. And so we're super, what's the date on that, Justine? The 15th, thank you. December 15th, we're going to have a young adults worship night. If I say something, it will only be like a couple sentences because I am sick of talking. I just want to worship, all right? We're just going to come together and we're going to look at Jesus and sing to him because that matures you. I remember when I was like in high school and I first got saved, the worship leader at our youth group was just incredible. And every week it was like I wasn't growing from the teaching. I was just growing from being in the presence of God in worship, all right? That's what our goal is with those worship nights that we're probably going to be having about quarterly. Just get us all together and just cry out to God and experience his presence. Okay, 3, I feel like I'm making a bunch of really exciting big announcements tonight. Okay, in April, we're going to have a retreat. Come on. We're going to go off to some retreat center or some cabin or something. We're still trying to figure it out. It'll probably be around April. We're just going to all get together, and we're just going to cry out to God and encounter him. I'm super excited about this because I can guarantee it's going to be key in every single one of you for spiritual formation. It's going to be an awesome time to get to know each other and to get to know God on a deeper level. And so that's our practical, what are we doing for spiritual formation? Finally, I'm going to wrap this up here. Third big part of our mission, we do discover Jesus, we do spiritual formation. Third thing we do is make an impact. Let me get the worship team up here. We make an impact. Make an impact. This is what we do through our outreaches, our big events. I remember I went through a little funk when I was just discouraged. I was depressed. I was just thinking about a lot of my problems and about how much my life sucked and poor, pitiful me. I have a self-pity tendency. I don't know if I'm the only one in here like that. But I was just in a self-pity funk, right? And this was several years ago. I was still in school, and one of my mentors, he showed me this verse, and it forever shaped me. It's Jeremiah 22:11. It says, he defended the cause of the poor and the needy, and so all went well. So he's saying he reached out to those that were less privileged. He did outreach. He took care of the poor people. He took care of the people in need. He said, is that not what it means to know me, declares the Lord? What do you mean, what it means to know God? Knowing God is having Bible verses memorized. Knowing God is, being able to, recite, catechisms or knowing a bunch about theology. That's what knowing God is, and that's true. But Jeremiah says here, you know what it means? God says, you know what it means to know me? It means to look in the face of the poor and the oppressed. It means to do outreach. It means to go out into the community and make an impact. That is what it means to know God. That's the third thing that we drive home, that we are really passionate about doing here. He told me that. And that summer, I decided I was not going to sit at home and do nothing. I went out and I started volunteering with this group that worked with inner city kids and just reaching out to them. And it changed my life because it got my mind off of my stupid problems and got me caring about other people. There's a lot of you that are sitting in here tonight that are like, I'm so depressed. I hate my life. My life sucks. What am I going to do with my life? Oh, nothing ever goes my way. I'll never get out of this world alive. You know, it's kind of like whatever. And you think your solution is therapy, and some of you need therapy. You think your solution is something else. Some of you know what you need to do. You need to get out of your house and you need to go serve somebody. You need to get off your butt and help somebody else that has problems that are 10 times worse than yours ever will be. Because that grows you and that matures you, and that's what changes you. That's why we do, what we do is make an impact. That's why that's core here. Through our outreaches and our big events, even our hog coming up. It's a fund. We're raising supplies for the Better Together. Let me wrap up with this story and then we'll pray. But for those of you that are new, last week, 2 weeks ago, we had one of our very own young adults, 31-year-old wife, a child, another child that's 4 years old, who unexpectedly died in a car crash. The next day, a bunch of us were over at the Johnson's house. And I saw so many of you come in, pray for them, be there for her. I saw some of you keeping her kids. I saw some of you reaching out to Nicole, loving on Nicole after she saw her husband die. So many of you have done, I think the GoFundMe raised like, what is it? It's approaching 50 grand. And a lot of that was y'all pouring in money to them. And I just saw y'all surround her. There was a lady that I met at the house. I met her at the hospital. I was there at the hospital right after he died. And she was just looking around at the people that had showed up at 6 o'clock in the morning to be with this family and to care for them. I saw Maddie and Chris have been rock stars. A lot of y'all think Maddie's just funny. Maddie has a pastor's heart like no other. If you're hurting, Maddie's there for you, in an incredible, incredible way. I vouch for Maddie Jones, and Chris for that matter too. But I saw the community surround her and just pray over her and be there present with her. And I saw this lady I found out she was Bradley's coworker. She was his partner at their work. And I saw her then. I saw her the next day. I saw her at the funeral. And then on Sunday morning, you know where I saw her? I saw her here at church. And she looked at me, she said, I don't go to church. But after this past couple of weeks of seeing this church reach out to this family and love on this family, I've absolutely got to check this out and see what this is all about. And that happens because a bunch of young adults have the heart to reach out and make an impact. Now, I want to give you an attaboy, but I also want to call you to something higher. There are dozens of people out there who think the church has no heart to reach out and make an impact. I want our young adult community to be the ones that are there in the community. I want us to be the ones that are taking care of people. I want us to be the people that are present when families have crises. I want us to be the people that are there when the casseroles and the flowers are not there. We're still there for the Johnsons. When everything hits the fan in somebody's life, I want Grace Community Church young adults to be the intentional neighbors that reflect Christ, that are there on the dot. That's what I want this community to be, because there's somebody out there who is waiting for people in the church to step up and make an impact. And so let's just close out. I just want to sing one more song, and then we'll break up into discussion groups. But let me just pray over us. If you can just stand. I'm going to pray, and then Justine's going to sing over y'all. So God, here we are. Here we are. We're standing before you. We're in a place where we need you, God. You've put something in front of us that's big. You've put something in front of us that's powerful, and that's to see this entire community impacted with the gospel, to see what redemption means for every single area of life. It gets overwhelming at points, but God, we're here, and we're here tonight because we want to sign up. We want to sign up to discover you, Jesus. We want to sign up for spiritual formation where our hearts come alive for you. And God, we want to sign up to make an impact in this community. So Holy Spirit, this is a moment where this call is right in front of us. You're giving it to us. You're calling us to reach this community. I'm not just satisfied if us as people are changed. I'm only satisfied if the community beyond these four walls is changed. I don't want to just have an impact where I just go to church and I get encouraged and I'm happier about myself and I'm a little bit nicer and I don't say bad words anymore. I want something deeper, God. I want something deeper. I want something deeper where we really live in a way that makes the gospel impact the community, where we really live in a way that the lives around us are changed. I pray for that lady Shelley, for every single Shelley that you have in Sarasota that's in contact with us on a day-to-day basis, that we would live our lives in such a way that they would know the gospel of Jesus Christ as real as the person standing in front of me. That we would live our lives in such a way that people would know that Jesus wants their hearts. So Holy Spirit, I invite you to touch me. And in each and every one of you, I want you to just invite the Holy Spirit to touch you with his mission to impact this community. So tonight, God, we sign up. We sign up. We sign up for these three things: to discover you, to be formed by your Spirit, and to reach out into the world to make an impact. This is our vision. Come and touch us, God.